Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee for Wednesday, the 9th of February 2022. Can I ask if we have any apologies or substitutions?
I will give Councillor Massey's apologies as he cannot join the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of further substitutions. Vice Convener, Councillor Lang and Councillor McEwen joining us there, substituting for Councillor Sarwar and McCall.
Thank you very much for that. Can we now proceed to the roll call?
The vote is about a vote of censure against Sheila McCall.
David, I can hear what you're saying. I think that's not intended for the meeting.
We have to abstain.
Yeah, we'd just like to take the roll call, Vice Convener.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so if you can just let me know whether you're present when I call your name, that will be much appreciated, members. So we'll go with the two substitutes first. Councillor Lang.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor McEwen. So Councillor McEwen, have I got you?
I can work on mute button. You do have me, Danny. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks, Councillor McEwen. Okay, Councillor Barrett.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Coates.
Present.
Councillor Illingworth.
Present.
Councillor Jarvis.
Here.
Yeah. Councillor McDade.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Convener, I've already heard from yourself. So yeah. Councillor Reid.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Good morning. Present.
Morning. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Thank you. So Vice Convener, that should be everyone in the meeting.
Thank you very much. Can we move to declarations of interest? I will declare an interest in Culture Perth and Kinross, and for that item on the agenda, I will chair but will not contribute to the discussion. Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest?
Obviously, my chat mustn't be.
Yeah, I've got you. Councillor McEwen, yourself.
Just have a declaration, non-financial interest in Live Active Leisure.
Thank you. And Councillor Jarvis.
Yes, I've put it in chat, non-financial interest in both of those.
Thank you very much. If there are no further declarations of interest, can we please proceed to item 3 on the agenda? The minutes of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee of the 29th of November 2020. Do we have any comment on those minutes? Thank you. Councillor Stewart, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Convener.
That's 2021, not 2020.
Thanks, Vice Convener. So my comments weren't really regarding the accuracy of the minutes, but just their completeness. I recall at the start of the last meeting, Councillor Barrett raised a question over the September or August minute regarding Councillor Simpson's attendance. He was listed as not attending, but had asked a question. In terms of the scrutiny reviews, there were a couple of the scrutiny review panels, there were a couple of commitments given by the convener in terms of political balance and timeliness of reporting back to the committee before the regulated period for the local authority elections, and that doesn't seem to be mentioned. And in terms of Business Gateway, there's only one question and commitment from, there's only one question mentioned in that section of the minute. Yet there were an awful lot more questions asked, and there were certainly commitments given as well in terms of circulating Chief Executive correspondence, the Memorandum of Understanding, and I think there was also a commitment given that the contract, the replacement contract for the project management of Business Gateway would come back to either this committee or perhaps more appropriately SP&R before that was closed in March. Now, we had SP&R last week and that wasn't on the agenda. It's not on this agenda, and there won't be another meeting of either committee before March. So obviously that commitment can't be met.
Okay, thank you for that. I take on board all those points and I will seek to have the minute corrected and matters attended to. Thank you. Do we have any other comment on the minutes? There are no further comments on the minutes. I won't ask, therefore, for acceptance of the minutes at the moment, since questions have been raised, but I will ask for those matters to be addressed in the minutes and the minutes to be represented. Thank you. Moving on to item 4. The first item is the update by Culture Perth and Kinross. Oh, sorry. I see a comment from Councillor Crawford Reid. If it's not on the minutes, I hope it's appropriate. Councillor Reid.
It's just that I understand that Councillor McCall is not here because of illness, and I just wonder if we could, as a committee, send our best wishes to her for a speedy recovery.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. That's very kind. My understanding is that Councillor McCall's operation went successfully, and she is now at home on the road to recovery. But thank you, and I'm sure we can all join in that and pass on our best wishes to her. Thank you. Moving on then, can we move to item 4, the first part of which is the update by Culture Perth and Kinross. I understand that we have the Chief Executive and Mr. Findlay present, and can I hand over the floor now to Helen Smout. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and good morning, everyone. I have a presentation which I hope to keep brief for you. I know you'll have a very full agenda, and as always, James and I are very happy to take any questions today, or indeed any follow-up questions that members may have after the meeting. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Just want to start by saying, like everyone, we continue to navigate the pandemic one day at a time, and whilst there remains much uncertainty about the future, we can look back on 2021 in particular as a busy and very productive year for Culture Perth and Kinross. We remain very grateful for the continued support of our communities, the council and our various funders and supporters. And these images are just a few highlights, hopefully will be familiar to you. Next slide, please. Our service provision is very much near normal and back almost to pre-pandemic levels. The exception to this being Cooper Angus Library, which sits within the town hall. And whilst that remains closed, we have put in additional mobile library provision into the town, and indeed are running a drop-off and collect service via the local garage for people who are keen to get their library books either to them or back into the library out with the mobile times. All 3 museum venues were operational in 2021 and performed well in comparison with benchmark venues, thanks mainly due to a full programme of exhibitions. At Perth Museum and Art Gallery, the Romans exhibition is now closed to enable installation of new spring exhibitions. However, the Joan Airdley exhibition continues to attract visitors, many from out with Perth and Kinross, including visitors from England and Wales. We've had a visitor in at the weekend who had travelled all the way from Brighton specifically for that exhibition, such as the artist's popularity. Ailith Museum will reopen in May and will be completely redeveloped to link in with the Cateran Eco Museum and will be a gateway venue for that. And the rebuild and refurbishment is very much being done on Green Museum eco principles. And the Ferguson Gallery will reopen in April to celebrate its 30th anniversary as a gallery. Next slide, please. Visits to Perth Museum and Art Gallery in Q3 were 65% of pre-pandemic levels. This was up from 59% when we last reported to the committee in September. So slow and steady growth there. However, our January figures have exceeded January 19 and January 20 visits. So we're hopeful that confidence is increasing after the wobble people had with Omicron. Library visits, however, vary from site to site, and there's an average attendance of about 44% of our pre-pandemic numbers. Again, that's up from 33% the last time that we reported to the committee. However, it varies very much from venue to venue. So AK Bell currently sits at around 58% of its pre-pandemic visitors, and Auchterarder is nearer 41%. It remains a concern, and we will be looking further at the data and speaking to our customers to see whether this is a pandemic impact from which there'll be further bounce back, or indeed whether it's signs of a longer term change in customer behaviours. The pandemic accelerated our move to providing more online content. And whilst we've seen further growth in our e-library use, that's mainly focused on the e-newspaper and e-magazine offer through Press Reader, which is a fantastic resource and used by a lot of people. Our e-book and e-audio lending is about 11% of our overall book issues. So just under 90% of what people are reading through their libraries remains physical book provision. Next slide, please. Thanks. We've continued to make investments in our venues throughout the last year to improve the visitor experience and encourage returning visitors. This includes finding new ways to generate additional income, much of which we lost as a result of the pandemic and service closures. We've redesigned the shop at Perth Museum and introduced what a customer has nicknamed a micro cafe, a tea and coffee based offer for visitors, something that we had been repeatedly asked for by those coming to the museum. These changes have increased gross sales by 200% since they were introduced. Changes have also been made at Comrie Library, the picture there to the side, and if anybody has never been to Comrie Library, I urge a visit, if only because it's possibly one of our most pretty and beautiful locations. Within that change, we have piloting a books for sale offer, so people can come into the library and borrow a book, or they can browse and choose to purchase a book. And we also have second-hand books for sale. And what we're looking there is to see whether or not having this kind of entire book opportunity or book hub offer in the library helps to offset some of the running costs and make the venues more sustainable in this period of reduced income. We're also looking to further expand opportunities for income generation, and we've recently started an online book shop, giving visitors to any library or who are visiting our catalogue online the opportunity of borrowing a book, or indeed purchasing a book if they don't want to wait until one becomes available, or if we don't have one in stock. And again, we have second-hand book sales now in all of our libraries to encourage further income generation. We can make the link for the bookshop available, so hopefully people can use it for their future book purchasing. Next slide, please. In terms of key issues you know, as with everybody, return rates are increasing month on month, but it is slow. That makes it difficult to predict long-term impacts on visitor behaviours, makes planning challenging. We will be undertaking the library review and having that conversation with customers, and we have an ongoing survey at the moment with museum customers, again trying to interrogate more about what their likely changes in behaviours and what the likely return rates are over the next year or two. And all of this does have a direct impact on our income, which is not back to pre-pandemic levels, as it is so reliant on the footfall and generating income per head from people who come through the door. If I can move on now with the next slide, please. Just to talk, I know the committee were keen to hear an update on the health and wellbeing offer within our libraries that we talked about at the last Scrutiny Committee, and work and how that work supports the wider recovery priorities in the region. The Perthshire Seed Library was launched in November, and we're working with Perthshire organic gardeners to provide vegetable and food plant seeds, flower and companion plants, and native plant seeds. We know that for many people, gardening or growing and being outside and amongst nature has a very positive effect on mental health and well-being. And by encouraging people to share and save seeds, we can have a powerful discussion with them about food sustainability, security, and the impacts of climate change locally and indeed internationally. Membership costs £5 per year, and members can both donate and receive seeds, attend workshops led by experts, training events, and network with other members, which is a really important aspect on that wellbeing agenda, the contact and connectivity that you can have through a shared interest or hobby. We will not just have to have people who have a garden attending, of course, and you can grow from seed on a windowsill, in a shared space or in an allotment. And we're reaching out to all of the various groups across Perthshire who're engaged in activity and who could well benefit from the Seed Library. Work has been completed on the new health and wellbeing area at the AK Bell Library. This is being used by a number of different groups, including Perth Women's Group, Pink Saltire and PCAVs, with whom we partner on a creative writing for wellbeing group. And those are individuals who referred to that activity to support them in their mental health recovery journeys. We now have in place amongst our staff team trained mental health first aiders who can support members of the public who are in crisis when they come into a public building, or indeed to know that they can come into our buildings, including Perth Museum and Art Gallery and the AK Bell Library. Additionally, we continue to invest in staff development and training to ensure that their awareness and understanding of issues which they may see amongst customers or users of services, such as drug and alcohol issues or dyslexia, or indeed a variety of mental health and wellbeing issues and disabilities. We have been re-engaging with community partners as they begin their return. And 23 groups were represented at a recent event, including Live Active Leisure, PCAV's Carers Hub, St Johnstone Community Trust, Mindspace, Centre for Inclusive Living and the Nuke. That event sought to re-establish contact following the disruption of closures and the last 2 years, when face-to-face work has not always continued. To hear from them how we as a service and an organisation can work more effectively with them, how we can make our resources more accessible to the people that they work with, and what types of projects we can collaborate with them on as we support this journey going forward. A number of discussions are now being taken forward with new services and opportunities being developed. We also continue to promote our extensive range of online resources, which I shared with the committee last time, and to make these more prominent and available in venue as well. And that's really important to give people the information and the tools to support their own needs, and that they can support their own self-directed care and empower them to take control of some of their recovery journeys, or indeed just finding out more about friends or relatives' conditions. So I'm aware, if we can have the last slide, thank you, that's a very quick and brief overview, and as I've said, James and I are very happy to take any questions that the committee may have. Thank you, Vice Convener.
Helen, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm getting feedback from somewhere, I'm not sure where. The first question is from Councillor Wilson.
Vice Convener, good morning and thank you. And Helen, thank you for an excellent but succinct presentation. You mentioned health a lot and well-being, and you, I think, homed in on mental health issues. What support have you had from the Health Board or Health Service in either training or encouragement, and have you had any engagement with them at all, given the excellent work that you're doing there?
Yeah, so thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will admit that it's been challenging to engage with some of our health colleagues who are exceptionally busy just now and have their focus very much firmly on an immediate response to the pandemic. We do have very good relationships with health visitors who we continue to engage with around things like our book bug and round time activity and referring mums and new parents, carers to that service. But there are a number of areas where we'd like to pick up the conversation again and to develop that further as services begin to return to something a bit more like normal. So we are very hopeful that we can re-engage with colleagues across the NHS. I think we have something very helpful to offer them and indeed colleagues in the Health and Social Care Partnership in terms of both resource and space where they can perhaps meet with people or run their own groups and activities, not just engage with the things that we have.
Helen, thank you very much for that answer. Vice Convener, I might just dwell with that for a moment. This is a vital subject, and I would ask you as the acting Scrutiny Committee convener for at least the time being, that you maybe engage with the leader of the council in terms of the community partnership working with the board, the health board. I mean, I know the pressures, we all know the pressures that certain health service staff are under, but this is now going into recovery mode, if you like, and if we have got staff willingly helping with mental health issues and other general health issues, then the health board have got to step up to the plate and support us. And I think through our community planning partnership, Vice Convener, if you can help in that process, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. I will take that matter forward as you suggest. Thank you. The next question, and so far the only other question we have, is Councillor David Illingworth. David.
Great, thank you very much. Helen, you've talked about the recovery, how footfall is recovering. What are your thoughts about the consequences if they don't fully recover?
Yeah, okay, thank you. We have in some areas of our service and our organisations, such as libraries, for example, we were already seeing a kind of slow decline in physical visits to services as people moved to using online services. So I would expect some of that decline to continue. If we get to a stage where we're not recovering, then we do have to have a conversation with our communities about actually what is it they want and need, and how can we deliver that differently. I think we can become quite fixated with libraries, for example, about them being a building And actually the building just houses a set of library services and library activities, which can be delivered in many, many different ways. They don't have to necessarily just be in that space. And while the space does offer somewhere in a community to go and meet people or to spend some time, there are other ways that we can engage with partners and work collaboratively in the community to offer the same sorts of things. So I think we are undertaking a library review at the moment, and within that, I think part of the conversation to be had with communities is what actually are the parts of what we do that are really necessary and vital, particularly just now. What are the bits which it's nice to have, and how might we deliver those in slightly different ways at different times to make them more accessible and to make sure that they reach the people who would most benefit from them. So I think there can only be change and improve in development. Nothing ever stands still, but it might mean thinking very differently about the services going forward.
Yeah, thank you for the update.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, Frank.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. Helen, that was a very, very good presentation. I'm obviously very interested in the outdoor life, wealth, health, etc. Have you explored the possibility of involving somewhere like the Northlands Golf Course, which is a very successful project for Perth and Kinross Council, etc., in the sense that I've experienced, obviously, in my background, that people love being outside. They could enjoy the runnings of a golf course, how the greens are kept, etc., etc. Have you explored that at all?
I have to say that's not necessarily one that we have, but it's certainly something that we can look at in the future. You're absolutely right. People do enjoy being outside and you know, have been encouraged even more so over the last couple of years. We are looking at how we might look at sort of social prescribing options with colleagues in Live Active Leisure and other things, so that perhaps if people are getting you know, advice and guidance to be outside and engage in physical activity, whether that's golfing or something else, that we might be able to use some of our resources to enhance that for them, provide additional information. We're really keen to make sure that we can signpost people wherever possible to the whole range of opportunities that there might be in their communities, and to use the resources and things that we have to add value to that experience where we can. So we can certainly look at that going forward.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you, Chief Executive, for your presentation. I was as somebody who chaired the Community Investment Fund panel that gave a grant to the Perthshire Seed Library. I was particularly pleased to see that up at the top of your list and get a really full explanation of that. I mean, it sounded to me at the time like an absolutely spot-on project. I wanted to go back to just follow up on Councillor Illingworth's question about footfall and your response about the changing nature of libraries, and I just wondered, I presume that you will have ongoing discussions with other sort of public sector partners about shared use of facilities. So whether it's somebody coming in, I mean, I know that Cooper Angus Town Hall is shut, but obviously it's a LAL run facility with a CPK library inside it. So I just wondered, you know, how many discussions have you got, and how advanced are discussions about, you know, either other services coming into libraries or libraries being located in other services?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. The co-location of services is a really key area that we are looking at. So as part of the library review, we have a work stream which is looking specifically at venues and the opportunities for shared use alongside council colleagues, but also, you know, having discussions with partners in the community as well. So I think that it has to be part of the picture going forward. It will be very different in each location because everybody is managing their developments in different ways, but it's very much at the forefront of our minds.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lang.
Thanks, Convener. Vice Convener. Helen, thanks for that presentation. It's good to see the diversification that that you're undergoing and offering services much wider than I think when the organisation was set up, and I think that's the way to go. Our concern is that in the difficult financial situation that you're in, that we're all in, how do you feel moving forward in this current situation you'll be able to maintain all these projects that you've set in train?
Yes, thank you. It's another good question. A lot of what we've been doing, we have been doing with funding, which we've brought in from trusts and foundations and other projects, all of which need to have an element of sustainability within them. However, there is a gap between what it currently costs to run all our co-provision and the income we have, and that's been impacted largely on the pandemic, as I've said. And other factors, costs are increasing, and other factors which are out with our control. And we do need to cut, our cloth to fit, and, we need to make the efficiencies where we can make efficiencies, and sometimes that will mean difficult decisions, but we're very focused on the priorities, and the priorities for us are about how can we support our communities and how can we contribute to a recovery agenda, whether that's health and well-being or employability opportunities, and make sure that when we are having to take those decisions, that they're not adversely affecting those who need us most in ways that are just not manageable. So we take great care to try and prioritise and target where we can, and we'll need to do more of that going forward. But it's also about thinking differently and trying to generate more income so that we can offset some of those costs and some of those pressures. Whether we'll manage to get the two to meet down the middle, or whether there's always going to be a need that slightly outstrips our finances, at this stage it's difficult to predict, but we're certainly looking to manage things as efficiently as possible and make some changes over the coming year.
Okay, thanks. Helen, would you, as there are no other questions up, Convener, would you allow me a second question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Helen, it's good to hear there's quite a lot of collaboration beginning to grow between yourselves and Live Active Leisure. I maybe missed if there was stuff with Horsecross as well, because it was quite an extensive discussion, and you could maybe comment if there is or not, because it would be good if all the others are working together, spreading the load a little bit. But the question is about co-location. I should probably know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway because I don't. So that's remiss of me. Do you have to pay the energy costs for the buildings that you have? Is that included in your budget, or does it come from another council budget? Because obviously we're facing major energy cost rises, and some of these buildings that you have will be difficult to heat as people come back in and the regulations change about heating and that. So that's, if you could comment these 2 points.
Absolutely. So just to deal with the energy point first, I have to say we're very grateful for the fact that the council continues to maintain and manage our properties. So that includes the energy costs. And we work with the council's energy team to make sure that we are operating the buildings as efficiently as possible and engage in the monitoring of that. We're aware of our obligations to try and make our activities as energy efficient as possible, but that budget does sit with the council. And just on the second point there, yes, we absolutely do collaborate where we have the opportunity to with our colleagues in Horsecross, and indeed myself and the chief executives of Horsecross and Live Active Leisure meet on a very regular basis, so that we're aware of what each other's doing and where their opportunities for collaboration may be. And I know that staff throughout the organisations also link in very regularly as well.
Thanks, Helen. I'm glad to hear that. It takes a little bit of pressure off you. But is there ongoing work between yourselves and council officers to reduce the carbon footprint? But as your buildings, I would imagine, some of them being quite old, are not probably the most energy efficient. So in this time, is there work ongoing and spend planned to reduce the carbon footprint and improve the energy efficiency in these buildings?
Yeah, so as I say, we continue to work with the council's energy team and to work within the planned maintenance and planned activities for all the council's estate. However, as part of the library review, when we're looking at co-location and potential use of the buildings going forward, then it will be very much mindful of reducing that energy footprint and, you know, reducing the impact generally on the climate. So decisions and activity that we take forward will be very mindful of that, certainly.
Thanks, Helen. You've answered the question completely, fully. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Fiona Robertson wishes to contribute to the answer. Thank you.
Only, I think Helen's covered the answer, actually. Thanks, Vice Convener. Only to add that the energy efficiency of these buildings, along with all the buildings that are leased to Alios by the council, Councillor Lang, all of that is being considered as part of the wider maintenance programme for the PKC estate.
Good, thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Fiona. I've put up a call for any last questions. I'm seeing none, so unless any appear very quickly. No, in that case, we'll move on. Can I thank the Chief Executive of CPK for her presentation this morning and for answering our questions so thoroughly. And can I thank both herself and Mr. Findlay for their attendance this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Now, if we may, can we move on to item 4, part 2, which is the update from Horsecross Arts Limited. And can I please welcome the Chief Executive, Mr. Nick Williams, and Colin Hood. I'll hand over now to Mr. Williams.
Good morning, Councillor. Thank you very much, Vice Convener. If we can move on to the presentation, I'm just going to talk a little bit this morning about how things went for our autumn and then what happened to us over Christmas with the Omicron wave. And then we'll talk a little bit about where we see things financially and operationally for the rest of this financial year, and a little short brief peek into 22-23. So let's move on to the first slide, please. So our autumn, bearing in mind that we only really got going in September, and then the programming was rather patchy in September and geared up into October. We had a very successful autumn season, actually. As you can see, we had over 48,000 people in attendance. And that's a big increase on autumn 2019, which is the sort of most recent comparable season. Ticket sales were very healthy, and actually you can see there that the balance between new ticket sales and rescheduled shows really was in favour of new sales, as people gained confidence and saw the appeal of what we were presenting. Really they wanted to see. In terms of who was coming, you know, it was a fairly local audience within a 25-minute drive time during that season, with some draw from Stirling and from Dundee. But I think that's something for us to work on, and certainly some comment to make on that in the coming season, which it is starting to see people coming from much further away. Two things to note, I suppose, which are notes of caution from us, really. We are very used to pre-pandemic seeing quite a lot of advanced booking sales, whereas in the autumn we saw most of those bookings, there 63%, within 2 weeks of the event. Now this poses us some challenges because it's very difficult for us to forecast income when the booking patterns have shifted so dramatically and to within such a short amount of time. So as a response to that, we are continuing to take a very cautious view in our forecasting and budgeting on ticket sales, with the express desire to make sure that we exceed those targets. But I think at this stage it's prudent of us to not be over optimistic in terms of bookings at a time when people still are expressing nervousness about returning, especially after the Omicron wave over the Christmas period and our closure. And then just a note at the end that in terms of who's coming, again, almost 60% are coming just in pairs, and this is down on what we would previously have seen. So clearly people are maintaining attendance in performing arts events within their households, rather than perhaps booking and coming with extended family or friends in larger groups. And finally, just we've had a decent repeat attendance rate, and I'm sure many of you have come to events over the autumn, but 23% repeat attendance rate, as you can see, is a good 5% higher than the Scottish average, which is encouraging that people are willing to come to us and then to come back to us, which I think is a testament to the team and the welcome and how safe we are, people feel when they come and see shows with us. Let's move to the next slide, please. So to talk a little bit about Panto, in so many ways it was very much on course to be Perth's best ever Panto. We'd had outstanding press and audience responses from Cinderella, and I'm sure those of you who saw it had a great time. If we had hit the sales that we were projecting we were going to hit, that would have reached £240,000, which is a financial target exceeded by 9%. I say if it had hit that, as you are very aware, we started to lose performances, first of all in the schools performances through the first part of December, as Omicron started to rear its head and prevalence of the virus started to sweep again through schools and their staff, and then further through performances that ended up being cancelled because of COVID in the latter half of the run. So in total we lost 25 performances and a total Panto ticket income loss of £121,000. So you can see how that relates to what we would have achieved and what that might mean for us. You know, it was the perfect storm in terms of the restrictions that were imposed on Boxing Day, which meant that it wasn't viable to run the Panto any longer. You know, you'll recall from previous scrutiny that a 1 metre distancing rule gives us a capacity of just over 100 in the theatre. And so unfortunately we took the very sad decision to end the show on Christmas Eve. Let's move on to the next slide. So just to give you a sense of what happened then in the concert hall and what that means for this quarter as well. The concert hall fared better over the Christmas season in that it only really lost a handful of performances. What it has done, however, is had a knock-on effect, and the deviation of the rules in Scotland from England has caused a number of tours coming up from England to postpone or cancel It has seen a lot of confidence in conferencing and events hire as well. And so as a result, we've got a number of events that appear in the brochure, which will have landed on all of your doorsteps already, that aren't now going ahead during February and March. And as you can see, some of it has been rescheduled. So the concert hall rentals value lost in the quarter is 61,000. But as I said, much of it has rescheduled into the next financial year. Some of it just postponing by a full year, and some of it moving into March or April or May, sorry. And then in terms of the loss on cancelled performances in the fourth quarter, we're looking at about £86,000 worth of cancellation lost income. You are, I'm sure, aware that the Scottish Government launched a fund when it announced the restrictions, and that has our application to that fund has now gone in. It is designed to cover losses incurred by organisations affected by the restrictions brought in. We're not going to know an outcome on this probably until early March, but we are very aware that they have said very publicly that there is not likely to be enough money to cover all of the losses that will be requested from it. Just to give you then a sense of the finances, I'm just going to hand over to Willie Addison, who's our Head of Finance and Administration, to talk you through the next two slides, which highlight both the financial performance in the autumn and the outlook for our year end. So Willie. Willie, are you there?
Okay, thanks for whoever unmuted me there. Now we can carry on. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is Q3 performance, very starkly in financial terms. It really just backs up what Nick's been saying there, that we had actually a really successful autumn programme and hence financial performance up until the point where Panto unfortunately had to be curtailed. I guess the key figure there is the net ticket income figure. So despite the six-figure loss on Panto that Nick described in the previous slides, for the quarter our overall deficit against budget on ticket income was only 17,000. So that's testimony to the good work and the success we were having up until that point. I think the reality that despite those issues that we encountered, we ultimately only were 23,000 down against our target is testimony to the success of other events and our cost control that obviously we've been working on a great deal. Probably not going to say anything else about those numbers, I think. Again, happy to take questions at the end of the presentation if required. I think if we move to the next slide, which shows the projections for the rest of the year. You'll recall at last scrutiny, we were projecting a year-end forecast that was 70,000-ish, so about 20,000 above budget. Because of the situations that Nick has just described, especially the issues that we've had in cancellations and postponements for Q4 events, we've pulled those forecasts back somewhat. So we are actually expecting a surplus more or less around the budgeted figure, but by definition with lots of little ups and downs within that. It's born out of a scenario where, because of missed events, we are effectively receiving less net income, but we are evidencing good cost control across the organisation, which kind of balances that out. This is all obviously prior to any settlement or otherwise from the COVID mitigation fund. Next slide, please. So I'll actually pass back to Nick to do a bit of summing up.
Thank you. So as I said earlier, we're taking a very cautious approach to budgeting and forecasting, but we have a level of optimism that the model that we've developed since we've reopened does work if we get the audience numbers through. I hope that you've had a chance to have a look at the brochure, which landed just a few weeks back, and get a sense of the range of activities across both of our buildings that are taking place, and that, you know, has recognise that it has a broad appeal to lots of different communities. I think it's very clear that some of our new approaches to marketing and our much more refined approach to using our data is starting to pay dividends now, and that we are much clearer in who we are targeting for what performances, and communicating what we have on offer more clearly to different constituency groups throughout the P&K region, but also a little bit further afield to bring that inward visitor audience in as well. I think, you know, it looks likely that we will end the year in a stable position, and as Woody said, you know, close to budgeted surplus. And as we talked about at the last scrutiny meeting, you know, we need to generate those surpluses to rebuild a reserve, but also to meet the equipment cost requirements that we're facing over the coming years, to upgrade the theatrical equipment in the concert hall especially. I'm very happy to answer any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much. Nick, I have two questions. I would ask other members to put questions in the chat as they come in, but I would go for the first question to Councillor Illingworth. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Deputy Convener. Nick, you've said that sales in autumn were 20% higher than in 2019. What do you attribute that growth to?
It's a good question. It took us a little bit of a while to understand what was really going on there. As you saw on the slide, there was about £230,000 worth of rescheduled performance sales. So there was a good chunk of people who had kept on hold of their tickets from when we closed in March 2020, and were very determined to come back, actually, and so that gave us a good bedrock. I think the programme did present a variety and interest. You know, I think there was, you know, there were big bands, there were terrific traditional musicians, we had a full classical programme, we had theatre of different varieties, we had comedy of the sort of the highest calibre, and I think it is that programming mix that actually we got it right, and I think you know, it's a good indicator for us on what that mix should be, actually, and where we need to continue to sort of work in terms of the balance of the programme. You know, we did see a level of non-attendance, so people having tickets that didn't come because of whatever their own personal circumstance was, and that's something that I think we're probably going to continue to see moving through these sort of later stages of the pandemic. But certainly in terms of sales, it is about the balance of programming that I think we got it right for that reopening season.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next question is Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Nick and Willie, for your update. Much appreciated. My kind of a double-barreled question about how we get people back in the door. You said some people were reluctant about it. Have you any plans for having, I say, an open day or an open afternoon to encourage folk just to come in as a kind of marketing exercise, and how that might go? Or I've got the programme in front of me. I'm trying to work out which ones I can book, because there's there's a variety of cancellations and moving forward stuff. I've had a couple of phone calls from the box office already. How are we going to keep in touch with your audience to keep them up to date with that, Nick? I think is a challenge, given that you don't know all of the givens in relation to constraints on the audience numbers, etc. And as the third part of that is, I know you've got restrictions on catering within the concert hall and the theatre. Has there been any, and I've asked you this question before in another forum, but any progress on working in partnership with any local restaurants or eateries round about to encourage joint trade, as it were?
Thank you very much, Councillor. Some good questions there. So in terms of getting people back in through the door, we've done a number of different sets of communication. So we've you know, we did a ring around in the autumn to look at some of the very regular bookers for certain strands of activity that were not coming back, and some of that was purely to do with personal circumstance, some of it was to do with reticence, and some of it was, of course, that you know, some people's long-term health has declined and their ability to come, unfortunately, it is lessened. We did run the Fun Palaces Weekender in October, which was a weekend long sort of open house of arts and creativity events that we worked both with CPK and Lalon, and you know, through the doors open to encourage people in. Unfortunately, on the Saturday it was the most horrendous pouring rain, which did depress those numbers a little bit, but you know, that's an annual fixture now. I think in terms of enticing people in, the because we don't currently have daytime catering options, there is an aspect around that, but we are still working on the business planning around that side of things, mainly because it poses a huge financial risk to us, and as you say, there are an awful lot of other local eateries around and about both the theatre and the concert hall as well, and you know, we know the hospitality business has struggled. You know, we're constantly looking for new ways and mechanisms to bring people into our buildings, and you know, the potential for open days is always there. I think what we haven't done at the moment is program anything like that whilst we come through the Omicron wave, because it's you know, we were still, it was only really 3 weeks ago that we were told that we could reopen. In terms of keeping in touch with audiences, we do a number of different things. So obviously we have our mailing list, so that's the brochure mailing list, which you know, reaches out to tens of thousands of people. We have our email lists, which are segmented according to interest and booking behaviour. So if you tell us that you want to come to classical concerts, then we will email you and tell you about classical concerts. And what we do also, as you mentioned, you know, when events have been rescheduled, the ticketing team will get on the phone and call people up. And as I said, we did do that in the autumn as well, to talk to regular bookers who were not coming, to find out what it was that they were thinking. We continue to try and maintain a public presence through local press, and we're sort of evolving our approach to other forms of advertising. So we intend to take a stall at the farmers market in Perth from the beginning of March, and have a mobile box office and a team out there to just talk to people about what it is that we're doing and spread that word more widely. So I think we are constantly looking at new ways of keeping people in touch with what we're doing. And just to finally loop back around to catering, we've been talking to some of the sort of immediately local restaurants around the concert hall and the theatre about whether there are sort of co-promotional deals that we can do with them to promote sort of joint working and to sort of spread the economic impact of people coming into the city centre more broadly. And we've met with very positive responses there, and so do keep an eye out for those sorts of offers as we progress through the spring season.
Thanks very much for your comprehensive reply. Much appreciated.
Thank you. And the next question is Councillor Lang.
Thanks, Vice Convener, and thanks, Nick, and your team for the presentation. Been here a few years now and gone through this, and I can honestly say that I like the way this is going. It seems to me for the first time that the nettle's been grasped about and running as a business. So I commend you for the way that it's going, and your team and the finance director and the chair and everything. I might have a slight disagreement on the term deviation. I think both governments were using had different approaches to looking after their citizens, and are perfectly entitled to do that. So I was just wondering if we had, I didn't see it there, and obviously I'm only substituting scrutiny and it may came up before. Has Horse received any COVID relief funding in any shape or form since the pandemic, and how much was it? And already, because I didn't see it in these figures, but they were it was maybe before the 21-22 figures. It was maybe in the 2021 figures. And I was also wondering, obviously in all businesses, you need a maintenance and repair and equipment renewal reserve. And I was wondering if there is one present, or if that's something that you will be doing moving forward as the finances improve. So really the two questions of has there been funding from the COVID reserve, and do you have a maintenance, repairs and equipment in renewal reserve, or is that something that you're going to start? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your kind words. It's a testament to how hard the whole team have worked to sort of get Horsecross into a much more stable and efficient set of operations. In terms of COVID relief, yeah, we've received a number of emergency funding interventions. In the last financial year, we received £750,000 from the Performing Arts Venue Relief Fund, and a further £100,000 from the Pivotal, not from the Pivotal Fund, sorry, the Third Sector Fund. And then in this financial year, we received a second amount from the Performing Arts Venue Relief Fund for its second round in the summer. And that was, I think that was shown in one of the slides, and that was about £330,000. Both of those venue relief funds had a very specific remit around what we could and couldn't do with it, and both of those funds had a very specific remit around employing freelance personnel as well. So as a result, you know, it was part of the way that we funded our Zoom panto in Christmas 2020, and it supported the show for the under fives that we ran at Christmas this year with a local theatre company from King Ross. So yes, we have been supported from Scottish Government funds, and our grateful thanks for that support, and our fingers are crossed for the outcome of the COVID mitigation fund that has just applications just gone in. And in terms of maintenance, equipment and renewal, yes, I absolutely put my hand up and say that Horsecross has not built this reserve to pay for that sort of fund previously, and so it's very much a focus for the coming period, so that we can upgrade the equipment as we need it to protect the risk around equipment failure, and to make sure that we are continuing to offer facilities to the sector at large that are expected of modern and well-equipped venue, because, you know, nothing stands still in this sort of arena. So of course we have to keep up with what people expect from us, and that allows us to maintain our positioning within the marketplace for conference and events, as well as being a must stop for tours of all sorts of activity across Scotland.
Thanks very much. And a supplementary, just in saying, that's probably for Mr. Anderson. If you strip out that 1.2 million, Mr. Anderson, that's been received in grants, and Yeah, obviously it was to mitigate. What were the costs and the lack of sales? Now, where would we be? I'm trying to say is if these ticket sales and everything had gone ahead and we hadn't got 1.2 million, because I think it'll either skew it up or skew it down, the final position that we're sitting in. So it was just if you have an idea of where the company would be standing if COVID hadn't happened. I know it's very difficult, but you know, there's 1.2 million already put over the last 2 years, with hopefully more monies to come. And it would be an idea of what the losses incurred by COVID were, so we could see the true position of where Horsecross is at the moment.
I guess to some extent, Councillor, you've answered your own question in the sense of if you relate our forecast for this year and do the maths in terms of the figures, as Nick outlined, it's not as simple as that, because an awful lot of the COVID relief fund was received, but was only received on condition that it went straight out the door again to support freelancers and specific events. So from that perspective, it's not an exact science. It's certainly not the total value of those items. If we think about this particular year and refer back to the previous slides, between the Performing Arts Venue Relief Fund second tranche and the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, we've got 400k in this year's accounts, which is, you know, that is extraordinary income that wouldn't be there in a normal year. Having said that, not all of the Venue Relief Fund, again, was actual extra money. A fair portion of it, and again, I can provide that detail in arrears, is money that came in on the condition that it went straight out again. I think, you know, what I would want to draw members' attention to is the fact that both last year and forecast for this year is night and day in terms of financial control, and I think that's the real focus for Nick as the CEO, for Colin as our chair and our board, that we think we now have in normal times a financially sustainable model. But again, if specifically the members are keen to see the detail that Councillor Lang is looking for, I can do that for you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lang, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm really happy, and I want to reiterate that I think it's just, you know, we like to see the way it's going, but I'm totally confident with the way that the team seem to be handling this, and I'm really pleased. It's an important organisation, as all our alios are in Perth and Kinross, and obviously I wish them well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now come to Councillor Stewart's question, which will be the last, apart from one from myself, and unless any more appear quickly in the chat. Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thanks very much, Chief Executive, for your presentation. I am really reassured that, you know, even during these difficult times, that the plans of yourself and the board and the whole team at Horsecross have been do seem to be bearing fruit in terms of bringing Horsecross to a sort of stable and efficient operation, as you referenced. I think that your reference to the idea of taking a stall out with a mobile box office into the farmers market sounds great. And I guess some of the best ideas are really simple, but good luck with that. That sounds like a great initiative. I don't know why I haven't asked this question before, because we have looked at repeat performances, so it's a bit technical. It's just about the not repeat performances, repeat visits. It's just about the way that you measure that. Over what period is somebody counted as a repeat visitor? I mean, I've been to Horsecross a number of times for different types of events, but not for a couple of years. I just wonder at which point do I drop off being a repeat visitor and become a new visitor again?
So that particular metric as presented is a repeat visitor during the autumn season. So what we haven't done is analyze for this presentation repeat visits pre-pandemic. We looked purely at the autumn season to give a sense of how that autumn season had gone. There is I would say probably within arts marketers and audience development folk, a lot of debate on what constitutes a repeat visitor, because people's perception of how regularly they go to something and the reality can be quite different, but they still perceive themselves to be a regular attender, but they might only go once or twice a year, as far as the data is concerned. And of course, the other thing about the data is that we can only count someone as a repeat attender if it is the same person that booked the tickets. So, you know, you might be a repeat attender, but you only booked one set of tickets because, you know, your wife booked another set and you went with friends for another set, and you know, there's a little bit more art to it than science at times, but we have a much more powerful set of tools at our fingertips now to analyze our audiences and their behaviors, and it can make sort of artificial intelligence informed leaps based on postcodes and things like that to kind of give a confidence level around attendance. But we're starting again in terms of repeat attendance in that regard. You know, people who came before the pandemic and came regularly, we will still count them as repeat attenders, and it will take some time before we move into sort of post pandemic operations to really sort of reset what a repeat attender really is. So I without wanting to sound evasive, it's unfortunately not a straightforward answer actually, and very much aligned to our growing understanding of the data of our audiences in general.
Okay, so that's fine. I understand that it's complicated, but what I'm getting at, I think, is that was a 23% figure, is actually probably an underestimate in terms of whether people would consider themselves a repeat attender.
Yes, we know the 23% is an absolutely concrete, hard fact in terms of booking, people who booked more than once during the season, but it probably hides the number of people that attended more than once quite a lot.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. And in the absence of other questions, finally one from myself, if I may. Nick, you spoke about the risk of equipment failure. Can I ask you to say a little about the magnitude of your perception of that risk in the context of the overall financial situation and position of Horse Cross going forwards? Thank you.
I think at the last scrutiny meeting, we've put a figure of roughly £250,000 a year in terms of ongoing investment over the next 10 years. Much of the equipment that we have is from when the concert hall first opened, so it really is getting to the end of its natural life. In terms of risk, there are certain key elements that pose more risk in terms of the systems that we have. Things like the lighting desk is very much in need of renewal now, and the longer we go without renewing that piece of equipment, the higher the risk of it having troubles during an actual performance. So it is fine for the time being, but we recognise that it does need work, and it needs work fairly imminently. You know, there are a number of other systems within the building that you know are teetering. We have had to spend a significant sum replacing our IT network in the concert hall and the Wi-Fi system, because increasingly modern equipment is all based on Wi-Fi, and our card machines, for example, are all based on Wi-Fi now. And so that was done through January and has given a much more stable base on which other systems can operate. But there is, you know, it's a recognition that we have presented to the board, that we all agree that we need to take a proactive approach to equipment renewal now before it becomes really a big problem for us over the next 2 years.
Thank you very much for that. I see no further questions, and therefore, unless any appear very quickly, can I thank Mr. Williams and his team for their presentation to us this morning, and for answering all of our questions so fully. And it's a delight to me to see the position that Horse Cross are now in, and I can only wish them well going forwards, and I'm looking forward to my next visit in March. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
Thank you all very much indeed.
Moving forwards,
Can
members,
I request a comfort break? Vice?
there's only one more item, David, and I'd wish to proceed quickly with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving forwards, members will note at item 5, there is a note with regard to the progress of the Scrutiny review group looking into the matters of the judicial review into the closure of Abernight School. At this stage, I would just wish to add to that note by saying that a very helpful meeting was held yesterday on the Tuesday, the 8th of February, and further sessions are planned for Tuesday, the 15th of February and Thursday, the 17th of February, after which the review group will consider its report. And I wish to leave it at that. Councillor McDade, you have an amendment. I'm not sure that there is a matter here. This is a note in the public domain for members also, that I don't believe is for debate, discussion or decision today. But please, can I ask you to speak?
Thank you, Vice Convener. If you don't wish to accept it as an amendment, I'm happy to bring it as a point of order under Standing Order 10.3 as an urgent motion if you prefer. I don't mind which it is. I have significant concerns about the progress of the Abernight review. I think, given the timescale as we head towards the local government elections next month, the Purdah period kicks in, that this matter has not been given the time it deserves or was committed to, and I would like to bring forward a motion or an amendment, however you would prefer it, to put that matter to the new Scrutiny Committee for their proper consideration of this matter.
Thank you for that. I am not aware, Councillor McDade, that you have brought any disquiet about matters to the attention of the convener, or in her absence, myself in her stead before this, and I therefore see that there is no urgent matter, that there is no urgency that can be put to a matter at the moment. So I'm not minded to accept any motion or amendment as an urgent matter today. Thank you. Councillor Stewart, do you have a question?
Thank you, Vice Convener. The agenda says that item 5 is a scrutiny reviews update, but there's only an update provided on Abernight. At the last committee, both panels were to be set up. My understanding was, from the answer I got from the convener at the time, the week following the meeting. I think the Abernight one was only set up in mid-January, roughly. Has the other review panel on funding for external bodies been set up yet?
I have to say that I am not aware of all of the discussion that the convener has had with officers with regard to that, but I am aware that the matter is being progressed. Thank you.
So just to be clear, it hasn't been that second panel. I mean, perhaps one of the officers could come in. That second review panel has not been set up yet.
it is being progressed. But if I think Karen Donaldson or Lisa Simpson would wish to come in, please do.
Convener, sorry, Karen.
Please continue, Lisa.
No, I was just about to say that I haven't actually been cited on the detail of both of the reviews, because clearly I've stepped to the side, given that I'm involved in the Abernight one. So I don't know whether you have further information, but we can get that information and get it circulated around the group in due course to find out what the status of that review is. Unless you have any other information, or Danny has any other information at this point.
Vice Convener, I don't have information on the composition of the review group, other than the convener did comment that she hoped to bring forward the other report on the action partnerships to the April meeting of Scrutiny. I recall her indicating that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barrett, Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Vice Deputy Convener. I take it you're not aware that I raised concerns with the convener about the process that was being followed here, and that it did not reflect the undertakings that she'd given to Scrutiny Committee in the past. So concerns have been raised about this issue. And I was quite surprised. I know we only got the papers on Friday for this meeting, which is much shorter notice, but I was very surprised to see the complete change in scope set out in the note.
Yes, I'm conscious that you raised representations, Liz, and I was aware that the convener, before she went into hospital, had addressed those concerns with you.
No, she hadn't addressed and resolved them. No, and this is not what I expected to be coming to Scrutiny Committee at this meeting.
Okay, in that case, I will seek to address those matters following this meeting. Councillor McDade, you wish to come back in, and then I have Councillors Illingworth and Wilson.
Yes. Vice Convener, thank you very much. I did try calling the convener of the committee at the end of January a couple of times. I left a voicemail. I've not heard anything back. It is not my fault that my representations have not been heard on this matter, and indeed that does not stop the urgency of the fact that local government elections are next month. This was not what was intended in terms of what was requested by elected members, including myself. It was a full and transparent review. This is now a rushed job that has not got the support of all parties, has not the involvement of all parties, and currently, from my understanding, although it is currently being held in private, my understanding is the membership does not reflect the political balance of the council either, and I do not think that I think that's strong enough justification for an urgent motion. However, if you're not prepared to accept it today, I will simply bring it to full council instead.
Okay, I've made my position clear, Councillor McDade. I'm not prepared to bring it to this meeting, and I am prepared to discuss the matter with yourself and others in the absence of Councillor McCall going forwards. All I would say is that Councillor McCall had been progressing matters when she was offered the opportunity for surgery. I think she was entitled to take it, and therefore certain matters, without doubt, have not been progressed as coherently as they might have been, I feel, but that is circumstance.
Respectfully, Vice Convener, this has been 19 months. This is not a recent issue.
No, I accept that, and I'm prepared to discuss further. Councillor Illingworth.
Yeah, with regards to the light scrutiny review of the judicial decision for Abernight, I am comfortable, speaking as somebody who's sitting on that review, I am comfortable with the progress being made, and I am comfortable that it will be completed in time for the middle of next month. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Illingworth. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Vice Convener. A couple of questions. why has this taken so long to get to this stage? It's almost a year and a half since this was agreed. So I would like an explanation today, please, of why it's taken a year and a half to get to this point, that the actual, leaving aside the details, that the actual group has met. That's my first question. My second question, why has the scope changed for this? Because the version that we see in the papers today, I was quite surprised, was different from the one I've seen in previous documentation. And you would have thought that the scope would have been agreed at the beginning and would have stayed consistently in that situation. And whilst I understand fully your perfectly correct point about the convener and her visit to hospital, and I'm sure we all wish her well, that is a relatively recent event and doesn't explain the delay of a year and a half to get to where we are now. And I think, Vice Convener, we should have some discussion and explanation of why these delays have occurred today, and not simply brush the thing aside.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I have to say that having stepped into the shoes of the convener for the time being, I am simply not aware of all of the discussions that she had in earlier months with regard to progressing this review and the other one. The pandemic has, of course, caused delay to a lot of matters, and this is another one that is included. With regard to the scope, again, Councillor McCall has come to a judgment on that, and I have been, as Vice Convener, I'm now in the position where I need to take that forwards. Again, I am not privy to all of the discussion that has taken place with regard to the scope, but members have been given notification of that scope. I'm sorry, but I cannot answer more fully than that. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks. It's just a follow-up question to something that Councillor Illingworth said as a member of the review panel, that he was understood that the matter would be completed by the middle of next month. So just a question. I recognise, Vice Convener, that you said that you were going to take this forward with further discussions afterwards. Would part of those discussions presumably needs to be whether we have to have an additional meeting of the Scrutiny Committee to hear those, to hear the outcome? Is that
that Colin will certainly be part of the discussions I think that we need to have, but the review itself is ongoing. Councillor Illingworth, you have a further comment?
Just to say that I'm comfortable with the scope of the review. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McDade, do you have a final question?
Yes, Councillor Parrott. My question is around the membership of the panel, and also my understanding is that you are now convening that panel, and I would just like some detail about how the membership was decided upon for the watching public, so that they can understand how it was decided who was going to be on this panel, and if you can confirm if you are now the chair of that panel, and in terms of taking this forward. Again, you will be, as Councillor Stewart has requested, bringing this to a meeting before the local government elections, or I would suggest that my urgent motion is urgent.
I am convening the review while Councillor McCall is indisposed, and the review panel continues with the other three members of the panel. Whether Councillor McCall remains indisposed for all of the sessions, we simply don't know at the moment. I think that Danny has more of an answer with regard to the membership of the panel.
Yes, good morning, members. Apologies for my picture here. Unfortunately, the sun's coming in through a window and there's not an awful lot I can do about that. Yeah, I think Vice Convener has very well covered with regards to the chairing the subgroup at the minute and the situation there. With regards to the membership of the composition of the membership of the subgroup, the convener had, Councillor Cole had decided that the best course of action was obviously we had to have members chosen from the Scrutiny Committee, but also members who were not involved in the original process of the decision with regards to the closure of Abernite Primary School. So ultimately, that's where the composition came from. Members were asked, and it's obviously well within their rights to decline the opportunity to go onto the committee, to go onto the subgroup. Sorry. So that's basically the short answer, Councillor McDade, as to the composition of membership.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
I'm slightly confused because the Vice Convener voted on Abernite Primary School. He voted against closure, so I'm not quite sure how the membership can comprise people who weren't part of the original decision when the Vice Convener, who is now chairing the panel, was part of that decision and voted on it.
Again, Councillor McDade, I'm not privy to all of the discussions that took place between Councillor McCall and officers with regard to the makeup. And yes, I have been reminded that I did so vote, but the review is not about the matter of closure or otherwise of the school. The review is about the process and decision making and matters pertaining to taking the call in by Scottish ministers to judicial review, which is in a sense a different matter. Thank you. Unless there are any further questions or comment, I believe we've reached the end of this meeting and I would now wish to close it. Thank you.
I've in the box, I've got a further question arising from your answer, Convener.
Sorry, I was not seeing that. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
I've noted your response, Vice Convener, but I'm quite surprised that presumably you were briefed by the convener on the background issues involved in this, and also the discussion on the scope. And I'm quite surprised that that briefing has not taken place, because you've clearly indicated that you weren't privy to all of the discussion, and you haven't been able to give us an explanation of the reasons for the delay. Now, I would have thought that there would have been at least a summary provided by the convener as to why we've taken virtually a year and a half, perhaps even longer, to get to this, and it seems to me that we're now rushing ahead to do this in a hurry at what is the tail end of the life of the council, which is there's been ample time to proceed with this, Vice Convener, and I still am amazed to hear today that we have no explanation to why we're a year and a half late, and it's certainly entirely unsatisfactory indeed to not receive responses on that, and I'm extremely unhappy about it. I've been unhappy about this whole process, to be quite blunt, but I'm even more unhappy today having had these non-answers to our questions, and I know that other members want to raise matters, so I hope you will allow the discussion to continue, Vice Convener.
No, I can accept, Councillor Wilson, your unhappiness, but equally matters are now moving ahead within the lifetime of this council, and I cannot comment in one way or another on exactly the things that Councillor McCall may or may not have done. She did hand matters over to me in some respect before she went into hospital, but she had a lot on her plate with regards to getting into hospital and other matters that she had to attend to. Councillor McDade, do you have a supplementary question here?
No, I've asked my supplementary question.
Okay, Councillor Barrett again. Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you. If I could provide a bit more background, we still don't know who is on this subgroup apart from Councillor Illingworth. Not even that information has been provided. Whereas if I could perhaps remind the committee that Councillor McCall promised us on the 29th of November that things would be taken forward expeditiously, that there would be a meeting of this committee to appoint the review panel and set its terms of reference the following week, which would have been in December, and that there would be there was a promise of political balance in the panels. This was about both panels, not just Abernight. This is also about the funding of the local action partnerships. We heard absolutely nothing in December about a meeting of this committee. Councillor McCall had approached me before the meeting in November and asked if I would consider being on the review panel, and I said I would consider it, and she promised to send me information. None of that was forthcoming. She contacted me in the middle of January to ask me to come on the panel, and I said again that I was concerned about the delay and that there was not sufficient time to do justice to what had been proposed to Scrutiny Committee, and that the process she'd proposed to Scrutiny Committee had not been followed. So that gives some background to what hasn't been happening, certainly over the last 2 months.
Yep. Thank you for that, Councillor Barrett. Again, I cannot comment on things that Councillor McCall may or may not have done. What I can say is that the formal composition of the committee is Councillors Illingworth and Councillor Smith, and Councillor Massey, myself and Councillor McCall. I think Councillor McDade, you wish to come in again?
Yes, I do, Councillor Parrott. I'm more concerned now than I was at the start of the meeting, because you are chairing this panel and you have not been able to answer almost any of the questions put to you. And at Councillor Parrott, I have the absolute utmost respect for yourself, and I've known you for a long time. I am deeply concerned about this process. I am deeply concerned about the fact that you are chairing this process and have admitted yourself that you have not been provided by the convener with all the information that you clearly required to be able to answer elected members' questions on this matter, and you refused my urgent motion on the grounds that I hadn't contacted someone, and I have indicated that I have tried contacting them, and now it is apparent that actually the convener has not told you an awful lot about this process and what she's done on this process. Councillor Barrett has outlined that she has also raised concerns, and I would ask again that you consider to allow my urgent motion, given what we've heard today.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. No, I'm not allowing. I will not allow the urgent motion, but I believe that Karen Donaldson wishes to come in to make a comment.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. Councillors, I have been involved in the last 2 meetings of the Scrutiny Review Group, where terms of reference have been agreed by its members and progress has been made in terms of progressing this matter. I am aware of the undertaking given by the convener of Scrutiny Committee to deal with this matter expeditiously to ensure that a report does come to Council ahead of the restricted period. And I would also draw members' attention to the fact that the Scrutiny Committee itself is an apolitical committee. And therefore, in terms of the scrutiny review process, it is not a political area, and advice was given to the convener that there was no requirement for political balance within the group, and it was on that basis that the composition was progressed.
Councillor McDade, you wish to come in again? Thank you, Karen.
Yes, please, if I can ask questions of Karen Donaldson based on what she just said. Our scheme of administration standing orders do set down that things should be based on political balance, and indeed the convener committed to political balance, and the fact of not carrying out political balance is in itself a political act. To decide to exclude political groups, that is a political act in itself. Further to that, I think I would just like to query the point that Karen picked up around that this has been picked up in the last couple of weeks by the sounds of it. Can Karen Donaldson please provide us some detail as to what action officers, because my understanding from officers was that officers had back by September, October provided the convener with considerable amount of information to assist her with this. And can Karen Donaldson provide clarity on when officers did provide information to the convener?
It's most unfortunate these questions are being asked when the convener herself is not here to answer them. I am aware that the convener did provide an update at Scrutiny Committee back in November and indicated that officers had been supporting and that the matter was being progressed, and that is the case. So in accordance with the wishes of the Scrutiny Committee, the Scrutiny Review Group is proceeding, and it is doing so thoroughly. They have taken significant time together to look at the areas for questioning and to develop that so that we can bring that forward, so that the Scrutiny Committee can then consider the findings of that process.
Thank you, Karen.
Can you just confirm, you said it would be coming to council?
Sorry, but coming back to Scrutiny Committee.
Okay.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson, I believe you wish to make a comment also.
It's just to follow on from the last couple of comments or contributions, Vice Convener, and I also want to put on record my personal regard for you as an individual councillor, but this situation is completely unsatisfactory. Different members of the committee from different political groups have raised questions today about delays, about the scope, about the way things have been done in a variety of ways, and we haven't had any answers whatsoever. I'm disappointed, Vice Convener, that you're not allowing a debate and full discussion on where we are now and why there has been these delays, because they've been substantial. Promises have been made that this would be taken forward, and deadlines have been set, and they haven't been met. They haven't been met by a substantial amount. So the whole situation's entirely unsatisfactory as far as I'm concerned, and I would want to have it recorded in the minutes that my own personal dissatisfaction that we have not received answers to the questions and that we have not had the opportunity to discuss this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I recognise without hesitation the concerns that you have, and following this meeting I will be seeking advice on how we best take matters forwards. Councillor McDade.
Point of order, Councillor Parrott. Can we get some clarification? I would think the head of legal is perhaps still on the call, and she can perhaps provide clarity as the authority on standing orders, having written them. As far as I'm aware, this is an item that is on the agenda, and therefore it should be open to being amended. Can the head of legal provide us with some clarity on that, given your ruling?
Councillor McDade, I have made a ruling on this as the convener today, and I'm prepared to be held to account for that. Councillor McEwen. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Yes, thank you, Vice Convener. I apologise for my pause button being played up there. You know, I was previously on the Scrutiny Committee, but after the SFB had to restructure ourselves after 2 losses to our group, I'm no longer on this committee. I understand the process and what's been going on, and I think I could feel the councillors who are involved in this frustration. But I do think they need to be wary that they're not making up their own answers to questions that Councillor McCall isn't here to answer. And I think it's unfair to keep along these lines of inquiries when somebody doesn't get to answer the questions. I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think councillors are making themselves look very good.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor McEwen. I have heard all the concerns that have been raised. I'm more than happy to take those concerns forward and seek advice as to how we take matters forward properly. I'm sure your dissent can be recorded, Councillor McDade, and
thank you, Councillor Parrott. I would like to have my dissent officially recorded in the minutes.
Yeah.
That I am unhappy both with the process of this review, the progress it has made or lack thereof, and with your rulings today.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, I'm seeing mixed messages. I'm just wondering whether Lisa Simpson does wish to make a comment. No, I think not.
No, convener. The point was it was just to say that in terms of this item, if you wanted, given that questions had been asked, if you wanted to invite any further comments before you just closed the matter, just in terms of standing orders.
No, I think that there has been actually, with all the comments and questions, a considerable debate on this matter, which was perhaps not intended. We will record the dissent of those who wish to have their dissent recorded, and I will undertake to take matters forward with officers as to what is the proper way of proceeding at this stage. And at this point, I would wish to close the meeting. Thank you very much.